What do you like to eat for breakfast? Our guest thinks that the only thing better than a warm pie is leftover pie for breakfast on St. Louis and June. Welcome to St. Louis in Tune, and thank you for joining us for fresh perspectives on issues and events with experts, community leaders, and everyday people who make a difference in shaping our society and world. I'm Arnold Stricker, along with co-host Mark Langston. Mark, it's been a while, sir.
It has. The holidays snuck up on us, at least the Thanksgiving holidays. I have tucked my belly in, and I am back.
You let a belt link out or something?
Oh, a couple of them, I'm afraid. I know. It gets worse every year, Arnold. Every year.
Now, the pants, they shrink.
And that pecan pie, oh my.
Oh, yeah, pies. We're going to talk about pies.
Yeah, pecan pie is all, it's sugar. I think it's just sugar.
It's got pecans in it.
Oh, does it? Okay.
We haven't been together for so long. I did not get my Return to Civility book out.
Oh, it's time to return. It's been a challenging month.
It has been, and I can give us some civility that's not humorous, something that's actually serious, because sometimes with the way life goes, sometimes I think the last show we did was just, right after the election, and some people were losing their minds and some people were having fun. Their candidate won and everything like that. But you have to understand that life needs to be in balance, and it's important that we keep things in balance, that we don't go off track, and we don't decide to rely on individuals for our happiness or to rely on things that are happening in the world to determine what we should do. Live life. You can't worry about what's going to be happening tomorrow. And I know you need to save for the rainy day, but at the same time, you need to not let life stop. And some people do that. They just put things on hold, and very beneficial. I actually can't find a good one. All these things are funny.
Maybe at this point we could use funny, but yes, you said a word that I think is great, is balance. There's so much, balance for me is like that magical word. We need balance. Everybody needs balance all the time on everything.
Well, yeah. And
I don't want it to be all Republican all the time, and I don't want it to be all Democrat all the time. We need a balance in there. And
I want it to be focused on the people.
Wouldn't that be a novel idea?
You're talking about balance. We used to talk about this at work, is people, they don't like change. And change is disequilibrium. And when your disequilibrium is equilibrium, you can really ebb and flow with whatever comes your way. But that's a difficult place to get to, when you can move, ebb and flow with things, and when you're bouncing back and forth, and that becomes the norm. When change is the norm. Change is happening all the time. We're growing older. I know you aren't, Mark, but...
yes, I am. Talk to my knees. Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about. So
totally. Absolutely.
So that's our return to civility. Balance.
Very heavy. We're opening the show very heavy, aren't we?
Well, but we're going to go delving into an area that's just juicy, and it's got my chops licking here. The art of pie making. Anne Carpenter, author and baker, is in the studio talking about her book, You Had Me at Pie. Anne, welcome to St. Louis in Tune.
Thank you very much, Arnold, for having me.
What's the title?
You Had Me at Pie?
You Had Me at Pie. Explain that for us.
I'm with her.
Do you ever turn down pie?
I usually don't.
Yeah. Pie will bring balance in your life.
Yes.
Pie will make you happy.
It will.
Pie will make you happy. And you choose pie over cake.
Always.
Why
You
is
choose
that?
a wet dessert over a dry dessert.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get
Cake
that.
is dry. Cake is stale. Pie is flaky pastry crust, gooey center.
There's one place I will buy cake in the city of St. Louis.
Okay, let's hear it.
Cakery Bakery. Shameful plug for Cakery Bakery. Great cake.
Never heard of it.
Even cupcakes. They have a place called The Cup right behind the Chase.
Yeah. I have pie for breakfast even, by the way.
So
Pie for breakfast is totally delicious.
Yeah.
Because after all, it's fruit.
I do.
It's crust. Why is that not a perfect breakfast? People often ask me, well, how do I make this healthy? And my answer is your mental health just as important as your physical health?
Oh, there you go. So I have that extra piece of...
Does eating delicious food make you happy?
Oh, yeah.
So therefore, delicious food is health food.
When did you start all this?
Oh, I've been baking pies since I was a child. I'd always loved to mess around in the kitchen, and it took me a while to figure out this was going to be my life's work, but there was never a time I wasn't baking.
As you teach, it's been, 30-plus years at Kitchen Conservatory?
Yes.
And the new digs are really nice out there on Manchester Road.
On January 1st of this year, we moved to Manchester Road to a new building, and we increased from 2 kitchens to 3 teaching kitchens.
Wow, that's great.
Is that right by the Schnooks?
It's across the street, the old bowling alley, where the old bowling alley used to be.
I've driven by it, and I've...
Next door to Carl's Drive-In. That's the spot everybody knows.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Some good smash burgers there.
Oh, yeah.
Good shakes.
And IBC root beer.
Yeah.
Yep. Great place. I'll be darned. I see them doing classes and things there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do classes and things every day. We do 30 cooking classes a week.
Holy smokes.
On 30 different topics.
Yeah, and you can get a brochure, which,
we got to delve
matter
into
of fact,
that a little more.
My wife and I, we were going to a Valentine's Day kind of cooking together, and great place to buy the equipment. You have to have the equipment.
6,000 essential cooking tools.
That's right. There's good stuff there.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Go there for good stuff.
We're going to have to go there.
That's what the kids get us for Christmas. Is kitchen utensil stuff.
Okay.
Kitchen supply kinds of things.
This
things
is pretty neat. So it's just west of Brentwood Boulevard.
West of Brentwood, right, on the north side.
On Manchester.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming by.
So you've been doing this, and I think there's 1,000 kinds of different pies, because you have fruit pies, you have what you called it, something that I wasn't up from, transparent pies.
So transparent pie, a custard pie is eggs and cream. Mm-hmm. So when you set a pie with eggs but there's no cream, that's a transparent pie.
And those are very interesting. That's
what a pecan pie is, a transparent pie.
Okay, with pecans, Mark.
My favorite. Just my favorite. That's all I can tell you.
Would you like it, Mark, if we just did the syrup and sugar and eggs and dispensed with the pecans?
That's a chess pie, then.
Well, a chess pie usually has some, what do you call it, some little cornmeal in it to give it a little grit and a little texture on it. And the pecan pie doesn't have any of that flour in it. But it actually, if you take the pecans out and you add some maple, you've made a maple syrup pie.
Oh, stop
And the Canadians love that.
What?
You put that on your pancake.
Yeah. It's got crust on it, so it's already on the pancake.
Okay, so I have this question. As you were talking about that,
I'm gonna have to go
I really love key lime pie also. Key lime pie is what kind of pie?
Oh, my.
Is that just because it's like a combo?
No, key lime's a custard pie because there's cream and eggs.
Okay.
So if you think of lemon meringue, that's a meringue pie because you got a meringue on top. I actually think key lime is really good with a meringue on top, like a lemon meringue.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. And key lime, I had good key lime pie down in New Orleans, and it was almost gray. It was like a little grayish green.
So you mean they didn't put the food coloring in it?
It was
real limes that they used.
Yes.
Wow.
It was really good.
Now, in Florida, they do some kind of key lime pie where they use a salted pretzel crust. Where's the name for that? It's, I don't know, beach pie or something like that, as they call it. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh. You should have brought samples with you. I'm just saying.
So you could have them for breakfast.
I know. She should have brought samples. I don't know.
I think that's cruel to the listeners to hear you enjoying food that they can't.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's absolutely fine.
They're slobbering all over their radios right now.
In cooking class, a lot of times people will call and say, do we get to eat the food? And I say, it would be awfully cruel if we make all this food and then say, no food for you.
We're giving this away. Or the teacher just eats it in front of the students.
Oh, my.
All right. Okay. I've got so many gazillion questions here. Do you put, so this one's just popping right out because I have to get the answer to this. Do you put ice cream or whipped cream on top of any of your pies that you eat?
Absolutely. Maybe sometimes both, but some pies just demand to have a topping on it. Now, you don't need a topping on meringue pie because that's self-contained with its meringue topping. But I think an apple pie with ice cream and a pumpkin pie with whipped cream, is anything better?
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, that's
Probably
really
not, yeah.
Have you ever used huckleberries in a pie?
I have, but they're hard to find.
They're hard to find. I had huckleberry pie a long time ago, and maybe it was how it was made. It didn't taste very good.
It didn't have enough sugar in it because huckleberries are tart.
They're very tart.
And you know what defines a huckleberry is wild, so they're not cultivated. That's why in the Mark Twain novel, the hero is Huckleberry Finn because he's untamed.
Ooh. So there we go.
You know what? I learned something new on this show every
That's
time
why
I
people
tune
need to
in.
listen to this show.
That makes so much sense when you say that.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Now you have to reread the novel.
I'm going to have to, and I will keep that in the
The Untamed.
like you.
Finn.
It's a lot like you, Arnold.
Is
Untamed.
my name Arnold Huckleberry Stricker?
Yeah, Untamed Arnold. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's start at the basic thing, which people struggle with, is the crust, Anne.
Yes, it's foundational to the pie.
What mistakes do people make, and now what should they do other than buy your book because you have a great recipe in there on crust? Because crust is really what, to me, besides the goo, I call it the goo, but it really distinguishes.
Using the technical term there.
I was saying.
It distinguishes, a store-bought Mrs. Smith's from one. Man, you got a flaky crust on top, that apple pie. It's just incredible.
Have you ever eaten been served a pie and you end up eating the filling and you leave the crust on the plate because the crust isn't very good?
Yes,
Dry.
I have.
We can't have that.
No.
So in my book, I do step-by-step photographs of exactly what you should do at each step of the way. And because I think this is where people get frustrated, they think it's too difficult, they really panic about the crust. Mm-hmm. But we can solve this problem. If you have a piece of French tart, it is a all butter crust, and the crust supports the filling. Mm-hmm. So imagine you can eat that tart out of your hand. You can pick it up because the crust is sturdy enough to support the filling.
Right.
That's not what pie is. Pie is flaky, but it's also tender. And so you want to get that balance of flaky and tender so that pie's messy, because a messy pie is a better tasting pie. Here's how my trick is that it's 50% butter for flavor and 50% shortening for texture, because butter will never make a tender crust. It'll make a flaky crust, but not a tender crust. And the shortening makes a super tender crust. Now, if you think of Grandma's pie, which was probably an all lard crust, that was super tender, but it didn't have the butter taste.
And it's always better with butter.
That's our motto at Kitchen Conservatory.
That's right.
Have you ever found anything that wasn't improved by butter?
No.
Yeah, if it doesn't taste good, just put a tablespoon of butter in.
No, yep. Or a stick. I'm all about the stick of butter.
Well, some require
me.
that. Some recipes require a whole stick of butter, which
And
is
real butter.
8 tablespoons.
Let's talk about butter.
Yeah.
Well, what we're making here is we're not making salad. We're making dessert.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we need the dessert to be worth the calories.
Now, some people will say, can I substitute margarine? Tell them why they can't do that, Anne.
It doesn't have the flavor.
There it is.
Right there. I don't even know why they make margarine, but okay.
To clog people's arteries
That's
in a
it.
different way.
Must be. Doctors are doing it.
So we get the crust. Now, what about pans? I know there's different sizes. What should an average pie size?
Pie plates can run from 8-inch, 9-inch, 10-inch, and really you can use the same crust recipe and the same filling between an 8, 9, and 10. And in the 8, your pie is going to be a little taller. In the 10, it's going to be a little bit wider, but it'll work in any size pan. Use the pans you have.
And your recipe covers all of those sizes?
Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. You may have to roll out the crust a little thinner for a 10-inch, and it'll be a little thicker on an 8-inch. But in the end, it's going to be delicious.
Okay, now you're really we're getting down into brass tacks on crust here. How thick? I know it's going to determine the size of your pan, but how thick should generally the crust be?
So the thickness of the crust has nothing to do with the flakiness and tenderness of the crust. The way my recipe works, it's a 2-cup measure. So for a double crust, so 1 cup of flour per crust. So that means it's the same amount of dough for the bottom crust as it is for the top crust. But the bottom crust is going to be a little thinner because you have to go up the sides of the pie plate,
right.
And the top crust is going to be a little thicker because the diameter of the top is not as big as the diameter of the bottom. But it's all good.
And then you do your little pinchies at the side and things like that?
Crimping the crust for a fluted pie crust edge.
Man, I'm glad she's here.
Crimping.
That's right.
Me pinching?
Yeah, you're pinching. Yeah, you're all wrong. You need to take the class.
You need to get the terminology
I know.
correct.
That's right.
So lattice crust top.
Lattice.
No, you don't
No.
like that.
I'm not a big fan either.
You need a really sturdy, tough dough to do the lattice weave. And that's not a dough you want to eat.
Okay.
Yes.
It's going to be tough?
Yeah, it's not going to be tender. So with my pie crust recipe, you cannot make a lattice
Okay.
because you can't do the weave.
Okay.
I think it takes away from the cooking of the pie, too. Could be just me, but it just seems like it does.
I think they devised lattice crust for the food stylist devised it because then you see the berries busting out of the pie and it looks cute. But I'm all in about the taste.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the looks. We want to taste it.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like in your belly? We don't care about
What are
the
you
look.
doing there?
I don't know. I'm over here.
This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston. We're talking to Anne Carpenter about her book, You Had Me at Pie, and it's available at Reedy Press. And I'm going to just run through a little of the contents here. Double-crusted fruit pies, custard pies, meringue pies, transparent pies, chocolate pies, not pie. We're going to get to that one. But she also has tips for the perfect pie dough to blind bake pie, graham cracker pie crust. Graham cracker pie crust is really, what's challenging about that?
My graham cracker pie crust is not the graham cracker pie crust you're thinking about.
Okay.
So what I do, because you see the problem with usually a graham cracker crust, which on a key lime pie, is just graham cracker crumbs and melted butter. There's no pastry there.
Right.
I'm a pastry girl. I
Okay.
want pastry.
Okay.
Flaky, tender pastry. So what I do is I take my perfect pie dough, and instead of rolling it out in flour, I roll it out in graham cracker crumbs. So I get the nuttiness of the graham crackers, but still the flakiness of pastry. It's very good with a pumpkin pie.
Ooh. And you said something in the book about pumpkin pie that was, should we say that?
Yes, let's hear it. I
So
wanna hear it.
what is pumpkin?
Yeah.
It's a, what is it, a vegetable?
It's a gourd.
It's a gourd.
It's a squash.
Yeah.
And so if you the cans of Libby pumpkin all come from Morton, Illinois. All of the pumpkin for Libby is grown in the fields around Morton, Illinois, about 3 hours north of here. The cannery is in the field. They have hybridized a kind of butternut squash that's a little bit more orangey in color and huge, so they get more squash per plant, and they put them they pack them right into the can as soon as they harvest them. So what you're eating in the can is actually butternut squash. So I always say a fresh butternut squash is better than a canned pumpkin.
Okay, and she even goes into how you take care of that butternut squash to get it going, get it right, all the cooking and everything.
It's the best pumpkin pie you've ever eaten. And of course, what I tell my students is don't tell your friends and family that they're eating squash pie, because that just doesn't have the cachet. Tell them it's pumpkin pie, and they'll say, "Wow, is this pumpkin pie so much better?"
I'm telling somebody it's pumpkin pie and it's sweet potato pie. Have you ever made a sweet potato pie?
Sweet potatoes taste different. That's a what is it? It's a different kind of plant. But sweet potatoes have no connection to squash.
Okay.
And they have a very different flavor.
Interesting.
Wow.
See, this is why we are having Anne on the show today.
I am thankful for it.
Yes, because she goes apples, and this is another thing about apple pie. You have to get the right kind of apples.
I'm with you there. I'm finicky when it comes to apple pie.
So an apple for eating is not an apple for cooking.
Right.
Ooh.
Yes. So the apples you enjoy eating usually are not designed for long cooking. And you want a tart apple for cooking, and you don't want. Have you noticed that the apples in the store now are the size of grapefruits. They're enormous.
Yes.
And all that means is that there's less fruit flavor and more water in them. So that's just going to be a watery pie, those big jumbo apples. I also don't understand with the apples they've developed. You go into the grocery store, they all have porn star names. Envy, Jazz, Honeycrisp. What is this? These are not real apples.
Porn apples.
That's it. I love it. It's true. She's right.
In the world.
I know.
Those are apples we're not making pie with.
I hope not. The other thing about, just going into the store and seeing the quality, I should say the lack of quality of produce is just unbelievable. So when you purchase things for your pies, do you go to a farmer's market? Do you go just to the regular grocery store? And like when you're looking for apples, what are you looking for? Smaller apples? Are you looking for those that are ripe or semi-ripe or not so ripe because of the tartness? What are you looking for?
The apples that I really like for pie are Jonathan and McIntosh are very good, but they're a little harder to find. And then it really goes down from there. Now, some of the farmers markets in August and September will have some good apples. Size is usually a big indicator. Go for smaller apples because that means a less water content, and that's going to give you a better pie.
Okay. Picked right off the tree or let them sit for a while? Or
Apples usually will store very well, but they need to be stored in refrigeration to store well.
Okay.
But the apples are usually harvested August, September, and then if we want to eat them in December, you have to store them.
Okay.
Aye.
Well, I've got a whole lot more questions.
Do you?
We're going to take a little break here. We're talking to Anne Carpenter. She's the author of You Had Me at Pie. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston. We'll be right back. This is Arnold Stricker of St. Louis in Tune on behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was a major legal event and catalyst that contributed to the Civil War. The decision declared that Dred Scott could not be free because he was not a citizen. The 14th Amendment, also called the Dred Scott Amendment, granted citizenship to all born or naturalized here in our country and was intended to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court decision on July 9, 1868. The Dred Scott Heritage Foundation is requesting a commemorative stamp to be issued from the U.S. Postal Service to recognize and remember the heritage of this amendment by issuing a stamp with the likeness of the man Dred Scott. But we need your support and the support of thousands of people who would like to see this happen. To achieve this goal, we ask you to download, sign, and share the one-page petition with others. To find the petition, please go to dredscottlives.org and click on the Dred Scott Petition Drive on the right side of the page. On behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation, this has been Arnold Stricker of St. Louis in Tune.
At St. Louis in Tune, we strive to bring you informative, useful, and reflective stories, as well as interviews about current and historic issues and events that involve people, places, and things. We cover a wide range of topics, such as the arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, health, history, housing, humor, justice, and sports, and that's just to name a few. While St. Louis in Tune originates from the Gateway City and covers local topics, we also connect to what's going on nationally as well. If you missed any of our previously aired programs of St. Louis in Tune, simply visit stlintune.com. That's stlintune.com. There you'll find the show notes and everything that was mentioned in that episode and all the other great episodes as well. And if you've got an area that you'd like us to examine deeper, well, just let us know by dropping us a note at stlintune@gmail.com. That's stlintune@gmail.com. St. Louis in Tune. It's heard Monday through Friday on the USRadioNetwork.com. and many great radio stations around the U.S. and, of course, right here in St. Louis. Our website again is stlintune.com. Visit us today. That's stlintune.com.
Welcome Welcome back to St. Louis in Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston. We're talking to Anne Carpenter about her book, You Had Me at Pie, and she's been teaching cooking classes on how to make pie for more than 30 years. And that is done at the Kitchen Conservatory on Manchester Road. I am reading here, every year on the day before Thanksgiving, she guides 24 people in making their holiday pies of pumpkin, apple, and pecan, or pecan, depending upon what part of the country you're from.
Yeah.
She grew up making homemade pie dough for apple and blueberry pies. I love blueberry pie.
Ooh.
Then, as an adult, she discovered cherry pie. I love cherry pies, too. With the cherries from her backyard trees, she always chooses pie over cake for dessert. Black raspberry pie is really good, too, if you can find black raspberries.
Well, you can find black raspberries at some of the farmers markets, but the challenge with raspberries in a pie is they're very wet. So raspberries and strawberries, when you just cook them up, you have like soup.
Right.
And so I think if you're going to use any kind of raspberry in a pie, you need to mix it with another fruit because you won't have any substance for your filling.
Now, I was reading you maybe do two of these methods, but maybe you do both. You drain and then cook down the juice, and then you also add something to the juice or the jus to thicken it?
A fruit pie is fruit and sugar, but if you cook fruit and sugar, you have sauce. It's wet. And if it's wet, it's very hard to eat with a fork. So what you want to do for apple and cherry, what I do is I sugar the fruit, let it sit, and then for a couple of hours, and then I use a sieve to separate the juice from the fruit. I take that juice, which can be a couple of cups. When you draw out the water from the fruit, you can have a lot of liquid. I then boil that down and make a syrup that goes back into the filling. So I concentrate the flavor of the fruit, and I get rid of all that excess water. Even you need to have a thickener in your pie filling. And Grandma always used flour, but flour is a very poor thickener, and flour is very pasty. So I prefer using a starch. Cornstarch is fine, but my favorite is potato starch, because I find with cornstarch you can always taste that it has cornstarch in it.
Right.
Potato starch is a very neutral flavor, and you just taste the fruit. That it's fruit-forward pie, and you don't realize that there's starch in it. Potato starch used to be much harder to find, but with the rise of the gluten-free diets, it's in all the grocery stores now.
What about seeing some people have used gelatin to thicken that stuff?
You usually don't use gelatin in a pie because gelatin is firm when it's cold.
Okay.
And
there you go.
So sometimes you'll use gelatin in an icebox pie.
Okay.
But if it's a fruit pie, the gelatin isn't going to help you because you serve that at warm or room temperature, and that's still going to be liquefied.
They're going to be gooey. Now, as I'm thinking about people listening to the show, and maybe they've experimented with pies and they think it's a little too difficult, what are the basic kinds of tools that they need to accomplish a successful pie?
You do need a rolling pin to roll out the dough. I like to use a pastry blender in order to cut the fat into the flour. And then a tool that I think needs to be in every kitchen is called a bench knife. It's a little block of stainless steel, a square of stainless steel, and that helps you move the dough around on the board, make sure it's not sticking underneath, and helps you to orient the dough into the pie plate. And then I do use a rolling mat, a little silicone mat, because that keeps my countertop clean, and it also is flexible for me to roll out the dough without it sticking too badly.
Now, people don't cook anymore, it seems like. They don't bake anymore. They've forgotten how to do that stuff. That's why they buy all this stuff. But go into the real detail, because it's and folks, you need to go to the classes, because that's the ultimate, because then you get the hands-on. You see the equipment. If you like the equipment, like I don't have that, you can buy that at Kitchen Conservatory. But go through, because you need to put flour down on the mat, you need to put flour on your rolling pin, do all these things.
I like to flour the dough. I don't flour the pin, but
Okay,
that's just
interesting.
my technique on
Okay.
that. But I think it's true that a lot of people don't cook, but I think there is a hunger and a desire for those smells and baking in the home kitchen, and we
Agreed.
saw that post-COVID with the rise of sourdough bread. And notice my pun. But
I was going to say, how is that getting by us? Okay.
There are a lot of
Very
people
good.
who are getting very into some of these specialized baking arts and mastering them in their own kitchen because the pleasure is the smell, the taste, I did this is my product from my own hand, and anything you bake in your own kitchen is going to be better than anything you buy.
Yes. Now let's talk about flour. What kind of flour? Should we buy gold medal everyday flour, or I know there's King Arthur flour. There's bunch of different kinds of flour.
I use all-purpose flour in my pie dough, and I think you can use any brand.
Okay. All right.
Well, that's good.
You heard it from the source there.
Right.
All right. And your favorite pie is what, Anne?
Cherry.
Ooh, I'm with you. I like cherry, good cherry pie.
A nice scoop of vanilla bean ice cream on top.
Oh.
It's very important the type of cherries that you use for cherry pie.
Okay.
You want to use what's called pie cherries or Montmorency, and they're small and tart. So you can't make a cherry pie with Bing cherries. They don't have the right texture or taste for a pie. This goes back to the apple conversation. The fruit you eat is not the same as the fruit you bake with.
Right.
You want to have something tartar and with a bigger punch to it.
Do you get frozen? Do you buy fresh and then you have to pit them and everything like that?
So there's the challenge with cherries. As you mentioned, I have a cherry tree a Montmorency cherry tree in my backyard, which means I have to get out the ladder, I got to climb up, I got to pick the cherries, I then have to pit the cherries and to prepare them for processing for the pie. Or at the end of July, you can get in your car, you can drive 9 hours to Door County, Wisconsin, and you buy the cherries not only picked, they're pitted. And then you drive back, and then you have cherry. I get a couple 100 pounds of cherries, and I figure 1 or 2 cherry pies a week is about the right amount.
Right. And can you freeze them?
Yeah, they freeze very well.
Okay.
Some fruit freeze very well. Blueberries, blackberries, cherries, they all freeze very well. The only caveat I give, if you've got frozen fruit that you're going to put in a pie, you must defrost the fruit completely before making your pie, because what a freezer does is that it breaks up the cells in the fruit, just like the freeze will freeze your pipes in your house. So what happens is all the cells burst out with the water, and you get this big puddle of liquid. You don't want to put that big puddle of liquid in your pie.
No doubt.
Wow, my head's spinning.
Well, and
This is all good stuff.
It really is, and I can't believe that. I can believe, because it's a great time to do it right before Thanksgiving in teaching people. But how often do you do these classes on pie making?
We have pie classes regularly because there's a desire for pie, but there's no question the day before Thanksgiving, I call it our pie day, because this year we did 75 pies that day.
Wow.
Now, this is going to be, all right, here's a curveball.
Okay.
Do you have a pie class on Pie Day?
We have.
Ay.
Of course, I understand that's now been renamed St. Louis Day.
That's true. Yeah, 314 Day.
Oh.
But when we do it on Pie Day, we try to do a savory pie. It's not just the dessert pies, but do a meat pie or a pot
meat
pie.
Like meat? What is mincemeat pie?
Mincemeat is dried fruits and candied rind, all cooked together, and then the reason why there's some old-fashioned versions that will have meat in it, but usually it's the beef fat that's in there, and that fat. Beef fat's a great flavor.
Oh, yeah.
Just like pork fat is a great flavor.
Right.
So the fruit is cooked in this fat, and you cook it all up and can it, and then it's available for when you just dump it into a pie shell and make a pie out of it. But it's actually, I don't have a mincemeat pie recipe in this book, but I have something that's a little similar. It's the raisin pie. So if you look at my raisin pie recipe, that has a lot of the same kinds of fruits that are in mincemeat pie.
I remember growing up, of course, they were Mrs. Smith's. My mom never made the pies. And this mincemeat pie, the most disgusting thing, that it's like eating a fruitcake.
My dad liked mincemeat pie. I was sitting here just thinking about that. It's rough. I never could do it.
No, I couldn't either. Very interesting.
I think it's because you got fixated on the word meat and you weren't actually thinking, you didn't know what the ingredients were. So I think, do you like raisins?
Oh, I love raisins.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I said raisin pie, does that sound more enticing?
I could probably try that. Yeah.
So raisin apple pie.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what mincemeat pie is. It just has a lot of them in it. And fruitcake, then we have to talk fruitcake. I bet I could make you a fruitcake where you're like, oh, yeah, this is... After all, fruitcake is just a vehicle for brandy and rum.
That's true. And to pass it around from year to year because nobody wants to eat it. It's regifted.
No.
For several
Adding
decades.
more rum.
Yeah.
Wow.
The other nice thing about that you've done here in the book is you give these tips on a variety of pages, but I'm going to talk about the tip for the fresh Concord grape pie. Fresh Concord grapes are available only in August and September. Each grape needs to be squeezed to remove the seeds, but this pie is worth the effort once a year. You could do this by calendar and schedule when the fruit is in season.
You don't want to eat a peach pie not in the summer.
No,
it's only July and August that we're eating peach pie.
That's right. And I like white peach pie.
Okay.
Versus yellow peach.
That's different.
Yeah, it is. A little different flavor.
This is a weird question. What about pot pies? Do you do those at all?
Oh, yes. Pot pies are usually meat-based, so we're back to the meat here.
Yeah.
But you have a chicken pot pie or any of steak and kidney pie, as the British always like to do.
Ooh.
But it's just in a pot pie, you then have your soup, you're in the bowl, and then you top it with a pie crust and bake it and eat it. The other version of that is pasty, where it's a turnover, and the pasties are filled with a meat and vegetable.
Calzone, is it similar to that?
It is like a calzone, except it comes from Wales.
Okay, wow.
Wow. I love pot pies, chicken pot pie.
Yeah, we have to qualify this for those people who think there's hashish in it, but there's no pot in this.
I'm so sorry about this.
There's no pot in a pot pie.
No, there's not.
You know,
But we have a class called High on Pot Pies.
So there you go. Now you're confused.
You have to play with it. You have, and they have catchy titles at Kitchen Conservatory.
We like to have fun with our food.
They really do. They really do. It's. We've taken several classes there. It's a lot of fun. Mark, you need to go there with Maria.
I'm going to. I'm thinking about this afternoon. Heading over there.
The most challenging pie that you've ever had to make, what is that?
I think people usually find meringue pies to be the most challenging.
Why is that?
Well, if you think about your grandma's recipe for a lemon meringue pie, or if you ever had one of those, so sometimes, and it's first you have to bake the pie crust. Mm-hmm. We bake it blind because blind baking is when you put a cold filling into a pie. And so you need to have your crust fully baked before you put your filling in. So when you and if you just put the dough in the pie plate and stick it in the oven, the sides will fall down and the bottom will pop up. So you don't have a cavity. So you need to line, if you lay your pie dough in your pie plate, you line it with aluminum foil and fill it with pie weights, which then will keep the shape of the cavity. You bake it until the pastry's baked. You take it out, you take out your pie weights, and then you can fill it with your filling. Sometimes people have lemon meringue pies where the lemon filling didn't sit up, but they don't realize that till they cut into it because they've put the meringue on it. You put your meringue on it, back in the oven. It's a complicated step to make a lemon meringue pie. Yeah. So I actually, instead of, my lemon meringue filling is a lemon curd, which is much easier to make. It's a stovetop lemon where it's lemon, butter, sugar, eggs, and you cook it till it comes to a boil, and then you can put that in your pie filling. And that's always firm when it's cold.
Interesting.
Because the butter keeps it cold. Firm, I should say. Cold butter will keep it firm.
Butter again.
Yes, you notice a theme here with dessert. We like our butter.
Stick of butter.
Stick of butter.
I'm the stick of butter guy.
And people who maybe they start this and they throw it away, you talk about something that's a real simple one to start out with.
So if you think pie is too daunting, I recommend Cobbler. And Cobbler, Crisp, all those where you have a fruit bottom. It's just in a 9x13. It's not in a fancy pie plate. You can do it in anything. And then it has a topping on it. And there are lots of different versions of toppings for baked fruit things. Some people do oatmeal or brown sugar or all kinds of things like that. But my favorite topping of all, and the easiest one to make, it's just, you can do it blindfolded. You can do it with any fruit you have. It's a 1-1-1. Everybody can remember it. It's 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar, 1 egg, 1 cup of flour, a little bit of baking powder, spread it on, and everybody says it's the most delicious cobbler they've ever had.
There you go. And you put the goo in your 9x12 or whatever, or your 9x9.
Well, you have the fruit. You have the fruit on the bottom, mixed up with a little sugar, and then you put your topping on, and then you bake it for 45 minutes.
And you at what, 375?
Yeah, that's fine. And the topping spreads, and some of those more complicated ones, they'll have you do a rolled biscuit topping. This is just real simple.
Mark's writing all this stuff down.
I am.
Mark, the cookbook is available at Kitchen Conservatory for a
He
mere
actually has
$15.
one.
I'll be right.
He has one. He just didn't bring it today.
I don't. Do I?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, I do actually. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Is chocolate and bananas, I'm looking at the chocolate custard and banana cream pie. Bananas, do you want to use the bananas when they're really ripe, when they're a little green, when they're a little harder, when they're a little softer? When do you want to use them?
I think that's a matter of personal preference. Some people like their bananas firm, and some people like their bananas mushy, and I find they don't agree on that issue. You either go one way or the other. I remember a grocery guy told me once that the bananas cause the single most source of complaints in the grocery store. Too green, too ripe. The people like their bananas just the way they like their bananas.
Of course, if they get them green, they'll ripen up.
Okay.
You can't.
Well,
go the
haven't
other
you ever
direction.
heard you never buy green bananas if you think you're not going to make it?
What kind of chocolate should be used?
Delicious chocolate. Chocolate you want to eat. Chocolate you think tastes delicious.
So versus baking chocolate or milk chocolate or dark chocolate or 70% or 60%?
I like a dark bittersweet chocolate, but not everybody likes that. So you use the chocolate you like.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me,
Oh,
too.
yeah. This is wonderful.
Is there a difference in using a pie tin versus using like a glass pie plate or a ceramic pie plate as far as baking time and how the crust develops?
Usually pie is served in the dish it's baked in. So people like to use a dish that is pretty so they can take it to the table and show it off. And the metal pie plates are not as pretty for showing off your pie.
Right.
But in terms of baking, I do the ceramic because I think you get a crisper bottom crust. Nobody likes a soggy bottom.
No.
So the whole one of the tricks in making a good pie is not to have a soggy bottom. And some of the tricks on that are A, make sure your oven's hot, bake the pie at 375 degrees. B, when the pie goes into the oven, it's cold, because cold dough plus hot oven equals flaky pastry. So you don't want your pie dough to just sit out on the countertop and warm up, because as the dough warms up, it's then going to start to absorb the liquid filling. And then that's going to make the bottom crust soggy. So you want to put in you don't want to pour a hot filling into the pie dough. So you put your filling into the pie dough, put the top crust on, run it in the oven as quickly as possible, and then that'll get you a better bottom crust.
Couple things. Halfway through, do you turn?
I've never found that necessary.
Okay.
But ovens vary. Some ovens definitely have hot spots.
How about cutting into the top?
That's an old wives' tale.
Old wives' tale. Interesting.
Oh.
No need for that.
Don't need to put that little
Pie bird?
pie bird in there either.
Boy, that's such a fraud.
Wow.
Let us know what you think about that, Anne.
Wow.
That's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, there's no point to it.
Who knew?
Yeah, because it's like to release.
But it doesn't actually work, because the bottom of the bird just gets clogged up with dough, and the steam never goes through that to release it.
Interesting.
Steam's good.
Steam is good.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Wow.
Is there much in there about cobblers, though? We used to make cobblers on camping trips. We'd take cast iron pots,
Yeah.
and we'd put a bunch of coals on the top of it, and we would make peach cobblers, and they would be the best things in the world.
Sure, because you're out camping, everything tastes delicious because you're
That's
starving.
a good point. That's for sure.
But I have one cobbler recipe in it in the chapter called Not Pie, and it's the best cobbler recipe. And I promise you that once you take this cobbler recipe, you'll never go back to any other cobbler recipe.
Wow, okay. I'm going to take a look at that.
She's got apple brown Betty here, too. Breadcrumbs and butter, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, lemon, sugar, salt. Is that similar to a fruit cobbler?
Well, a brown Betty is an old-fashioned thing, and if you have some really yummy bread like brioche, and you grind that up, and then you mix it with more butter, and then you sprinkle that on top of your fruit, it can make a really nice crust.
Brioche bread, the way to go.
Oh.
Brioche bun for a hamburger.
Yeah, so brioche is the fattiest of all the bread. It's full of egg yolks and butter. That's what makes it so good. So when Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake, the word she used in French was brioche.
Brioche, yeah. Let them eat pastry.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Oh, my. So what's on the docket? You have another pie book, Pie 2. You had me at Pie 2.
I really think that I covered the basics of pie. You can substitute other fruits from the ones. For example, this book doesn't have a recipe for strawberry rhubarb, but you can use the generic fruit pie filling and just substitute different fruits and make a strawberry rhubarb or an apricot or a nectarine pie. Or you can always make plenty of variations along that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a key lime in here, but if you make the lemon meringue with lime zest and lime juice instead, I'd call that a key lime pie.
Right.
So I don't think we need book 2. However, the folks at Reedy Press have told me they do want another book from me. And what we're going to do is soup.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Chowder, bisque, gumbo,
Yeah.
cream of soups.
Yeah.
Gazpacho, vichyssoise. Yeah.
Made some turkey noodle soup
Good.
from the carcass the other day.
Did you now?
Had that
Right.
for dinner last night.
Wow.
So I have techniques on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the best techniques you should do with your carcass when you make your turkey soup is you need to cut up the carcass. Did you cut it up, Arnold?
We had spatchcocked it, and
Yeah.
so it was pretty much destroyed.
Well, no, see, it's really what makes you a better bone broth, because that's what you're doing, is you're making a bone broth,
Right.
is you need to expose the marrow and the bone.
Gotcha.
So it's very important
Chop it up.
that the backbone in particular gets cut up,
Okay.
because then your stock is so much more flavorful.
Yeah, and I had spatchcocked it so the backbone was gone.
Oh, the backbone is the best bone for making stock. Truly.
There we went.
I have a different method of spatchcocking. I don't
Okay.
cut out the backbone. I
Okay.
leave the backbone in because then the bone supports the meat.
Okay.
It gives you it doesn't fall
Keeps
apart.
it up
Well,
off the...
it's like it gives you a rack that your meat is on. It's also very good if you're going to grill it, is to leave the backbone on.
Okay.
But what I do is I cut the rib cage from the wing to the thigh bone,
Okay.
and then I'm able to flatten it that way,
Okay.
and the backbone stays. So I have a YouTube video on how to. I call it leaping frog chicken because it looks like a leaping frog.
I have to look at that.
Let's go to her house.
You know what
Have her cook
spatchcocking
it
is,
for us.
right?
Yeah.
You take the back out, and then you
Yeah.
actually...
But you're flattening it. You're
flattening it out.
taking a round bird
Yeah, it's
and
going
you're
like
making
this.
it flat, and it comes from dispatching the cock.
Say, hey.
I never knew.
I didn't. That's
No.
why you have to listen to this show, folks.
Who knew?
How many new things have we learned today, Mike?
Oh, I'm running out of notes or areas to put notes on. I know. This has been really fun.
This has been great,
Yeah.
and I want you to come back when you get that soup book done.
Certainly.
And bring samples. You can't have her back without samples. We'll set up a little
It's
table over
hard.
here.
We
and
don't have the kitchen set up to do
We'll
that.
figure it out. We'll find a place.
This has been fun. It's a great book, folks. You Had Me at Pie. It's by Anne Carpenter. You can get this at Reedy Press. This is a great book for the upcoming holidays, and it will help you in making pies. Husbands, maybe you want to get this for your wife or your daughter or yourself.
Stocking stuffer.
Yeah, great stocking stuffer.
Mm-hmm.
It will roll up and fit in there, and you need to try some of these out. And I'm encouraging everybody to do this because it's just not the ladies that should be making pies. There's a lot of men in your class.
So in the introduction, I tell the story of a student of mine who was a retired corporate executive, and he decided that he was going to take on pie baking as his extracurricular activity in retirement. And he mastered the art of making pies. And he does what he calls comfort pie. Somebody's back from the hospital, somebody's bereaved. He makes a pie and brings them a comfort pie. And at last count, when he told me, he'd now done 80 of them.
Wow. That's great.
Wow.
Much better than a bouquet of flowers is to get a comfort pie.
Yeah. Anne, do you have a favorite pie?
Cherry.
Oh, that's right. I beg your pardon. I forgot.
Yeah.
Cherry pie, which is one of my favorites, too.
And having pie for breakfast, I've done that.
Do it all the time.
I've done that.
Yeah. If we have pie around our house, it is my go-to breakfast. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Eggs, fruit.
Yeah.
It's got all the food groups in it. The important food groups, I'll tell you right now.
And if you have the right vegetables in there.
Squash.
Yeah. There you go.
Nuts.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the soup book.
Yeah, I am too. That'll be
Soup
good.
is good.
Now, this kind of goes, I need to do our word of the day because it relates to what we're talking about
we
here.
got about maybe
Our
5
word of the
minutes.
day is Saturnine.
Is that-
Saturnine. It means bitter or scornful, showing a brooding ill humor.
Wait. That is the wrong word for after our talk about delicious pie.
Well, I was gonna-
Why are you bringing us down?
His Saturnine attitude left me depressed.
Pie is about making people happy. Pie is about comfort. Can you please come up with the opposite?
Okay,
because
I've got
this
one.
is the wrong word for us today.
I've got one.
Yes.
If someone calls you fat because you've been eating some wonderful pie, just ignore them. You're bigger than that.
Okay.
How was that one?
Marginally better.
Marginally. Okay.
I like that one. That's a good one. Let's see here.
That is funny.
As a kid, I used to watch The Wizard of Oz and wonder how someone could talk if they didn't have a brain. Then I got social media.
Okay.
Let's see here. Ooh, there's a recipe for pastrami Reuben. Okay. Every time I try to eat healthy, along comes Thanksgiving, Christmas, summer, Friday, or Wednesday, and it ruins it for me.
Remember what I started off with? Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Eat delicious food. You will be mentally healthy.
There you go. There you are.
I think that's it.
We need to close on those words. Mental health. For your mental health, eat this pie.
Yes.
All right. And thanks for coming in today.
It was my pleasure.
Wow, Mark.
Had a lot of fun.
Got to crank up that oven. Get your supplies. Folks, don't forget to go to Kitchen Conservatory and catch some of these classes.
Make your house smell better.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Wow, folks. That's all for this hour. We thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and your salivate glands are really going, you can listen to additional shows at stlandtune.com. Consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us to reach more listeners and continue to grow. I want to thank Bob Berthasell for our theme music, our guest Anne Carpenter, and co-host Mark Langston. We thank you for being a part of our community of curious minds. St. Louis in Tune is a production of Motif Media Group and the U.S. Radio Network. Remember to keep seeking, keep learning, walk worthy, and let your light shine. For St. Louis in Tune, I'm Arnold Stricker.